Thank you for joining us today for the Conformed to Christ podcast, where we seek to engage the mind, affect the heart, and call people to follow Christ. My name is George Mace, and with me, as always, is Jay Jones.
Good morning.
And this is Free for All Friday.
Yes, it is.
We've got a couple of treats for you.
Mm-hmm.
How you doing over there?
Well, we got to save some of those treats because we're tired of talking about the CRT stuff. We're just going to have to wait it another week. But we have some crazy clips
so
for
much,
that to show. But we've got one today, a wild one.
Yep.
The theme of this episode kind of is, well, what do we call it, George? Like military and how should a Christian view military and the use of violence?
Yeah.
How about that?
Sure.
Does that work? So should Christians be pacifists, or are Christians allowed in the military? Like, how do we do this? Can they serve in combat arms, or they should be in the rear doing medical stuff or something? You know,
I'm guessing since you served in the military that we already have the answer. Right?
Maybe. Yeah. So for context, if you're listening and don't know where we are in Lawton, which is right next to Fort Sill, which is the home of the Field Artillery, combat arms branch of the Army.
Yep.
And, so our church is filled with military people, veterans, children of military people or veterans. Almost everyone's connected in some way. Not everybody. Not everybody is, but obviously that's the way it is. And when you're at a military town. So probably an important thing to talk about today. And to kick it off, we've got a crazy video we're going to show. But before we do, George,
that, we've got to talk about the ministry of truth.
Let's do it.
They're at it again.
They're gaslighting us, George.
Ministry of truth. Now it's acceptable. Facebook now is rescinding their ban on any post stating that the coronavirus was man-made.
Yeah. What a strange ban, right? I mean, it's
yeah. So back when this started over a year ago, the suggestion that it was man-made would get you censored.
Yeah.
Or thrown in the Facebook jail.
Thrown in the Facebook jail.
So it was originally thought that this came from someone over in Wuhan, China, eating a bat, right? And we saw the video of the market,
a wet market,
which I'm just gonna say was super gross.
Yeah.
I'm sure that you could get sick from eating stuff out of that market, but the story was that someone ate a bat that had this virus, and it started being transmittable to humans.
Yeah,
I don't know exactly how all that works,
right.
But the mere suggestion that it was man-made was taboo.
Yeah.
So President Trump making the suggestions that it was man-made, that this came out of a lab
in Wuhan,
calling it the China virus, all of that was criticized.
Yeah, people have such a. This is why the Trump derangement syndrome, like it's a real thing,
Right.
Because someone that you hate says something that you shouldn't always just immediately jump that this is wrong, right? They might actually be right about something.
Right.
That goes for everybody, I mean, it goes for the right and the left. You need to examine things and use critical thinking and logic. I mean, we were talking about this last March.
Yeah.
Even back then, I was able to find white papers, research papers that were released from that lab in Wuhan.
Mm-hmm.
And I was able to, I'm not a scientist, right? But I'm not a dummy either. I know how to read, and we read a lot and broadly. So I don't understand everything in this paper, but what I'm able to see is that they're doing research on coronaviruses in bats.
Yeah.
Right. How can they modify them to make them infectious to humans? Now, the reason why, you can't discern exactly why. Hopefully, it's to make some type of a broad um, some type of a broad medicine that can cure all coronaviruses. Like that's the goal. Like you have to keep taking a flu shot like every year. So scientists are kind of looking for this golden bullet, from what I understand, where they could immunize you one time and it could cover every mutation that occurs, like all flu viruses, all coronaviruses. So they're doing these things. But this type of research was banned in the United States.
Yeah.
This information was not hard for me to find. I'm not a researcher. I'm not a journalist. But Facebook was banning any conversations. I mean, if you just use basic logic, right? There's one lab in the whole world, doing this research on coronaviruses and modifying them. That's where it happens to leak.
Right.
So I never bought it. I mean, but you're like, oh, you're a conspiracy theorist. You're a QAnon. Like, no. And they were saying this. There were people on the left that they were saying this too, but they shut them down as well.
Yeah.
It wasn't just shut down people on the right. It was shut down everybody.
Mm-hmm.
But now I think everyone knew all along. They just couldn't do it because China makes all of our PPE, right? And so we make China mad. They just shut off the supply chain, and then nobody has masks, nobody has gloves, nobody has any of the medical equipment we need, and it's just Corona catastrophe over here. Yeah. How stupid of a country are we?
Very apparently. It's all about money.
Yeah.
And you can make things cheaper in China, probably because they use actual slaves. And then we have, millionaires over here lecturing us on racial
and human rights,
inequality and human rights
yeah.
over here in America, while just defending China.
Yeah.
And China and their human rights abuse. And
it's all about the money, dude.
I mean, we saw, John Cena.
Yeah.
Had he was being interviewed for Fast and the Furious 9, and what was his major offense? Calling Taiwan a country.
Yeah.
And China got mad, and so he issued an apology.
Right.
And they essentially neutered John Cena before
they did
the watching world.
The whole world. What a coward, dude. Was John Cena a real soldier, or does he just pretend to be one on WWE? Do you know?
I have no idea. I don't know.
I'm going to look it up right now. I'm going to go out on a limb and say this dude wasn't a real soldier.
Okay. Yeah, but he had to apologize to China for calling Taiwan a country. The majority of Taiwan, and there's a lot of history behind this, China wants to take over Taiwan and assimilate them into China. From what I've read, the majority of the Taiwanese people do not want to be a part of China. I can't imagine why.
Mm-hmm.
Could be because it's a communist regime. But instead of Americans, who are supposed to love freedom, instead of standing up for a country that wants to be free, instead we bow down to the Chinese dictator.
Yeah, it's pathetic.
Yeah.
I love this. I Googled this. Here's my answer. Did John Cena serve in the military? Answer. John Cena never served in the military, though he has played a Marine on TV. Ridiculous.
Yeah.
Yeah. Apology. I mean, they were going to lose millions. Some said $1 billion if they didn't play their movie over there.
Right.
So the apology tour starts.
So of course, it's not actually about freedom. You can talk about human rights all you want, but it really is about the money.
Yeah.
I mean, all of LeBron James's criticism, last year?
Mm-hmm.
Was it 2019?
Yeah.
When
it was last year. It's been probably
year?
both years. Both years.
Defending China.
Yeah.
The NBA.
Yeah.
Censoring people in the NBA from talking about free Hong Kong.
Mm-hmm.
It's all about money. They don't actually care about human rights. If they cared about human rights, they would actually take a critical look at China and say, China is one of the worst violators of human rights and liberty
Oh
in the
yeah.
world.
Mm-hmm.
We've talked about the Uyghurs. There's actual, might as well just call them concentration camps.
Yeah.
Um,
They have
did you see John Kerry before the Senate committee,
I
and
did.
he was asked about the solar panels?
Uh-huh.
Because the Democrats are pushing for this,
Right.
clean energy,
Uh-huh.
and he basically admitted that yeah, the a lot of these solar panels are probably made by the Uyghurs
Yeah.
over in China.
For
So
s- for,
for our convenience and for our comfort,
for slave labor.
China has slaves making this stuff.
When you go over to Southern California and you drive through the neighborhoods, George, I wouldn't recommend going there if you can avoid it. But if you do, they all have there's solar panels all over the houses. They probably feel super good about it, George.
Right.
Helping the world, and made by slaves.
Right. It's the same with the Green New Deal.
Yeah.
And how Americans are constantly being guilted into thinking that we're the worst polluters on the planet,
We're not even close.
and we've got to.
We're one of the cleanest.
We've got to we got to change all this stuff. We got to give up stuff so that we can, we can save the environment.
Mm-hmm.
And who's the number one violator?
It's
China.
We're one of the
Right?
cleanest.
It's China.
Yeah.
Like it's all about money. It's all about money.
dude.
It's
money and control.
We need to completely cut off China from even the conversation.
Yeah.
And we need to start manufacturing things back in America.
Don't rely on them for anything, man.
Yeah.
I can't believe that all our like we were put in that position. All our
Mhm.
medical stuff's made over there. That's insane, dude.
Yeah.
What a strategic fail on our military leaders, right?
Yeah.
And those that plan for
Mhm.
long-term things.
Right.
Yeah. How short-sighted of them. It's insane. I just can't believe it, man. You have to
Yeah.
think like, what if we went to war with China? They're going to cut everything off, like, and we're not going to have any medical supplies. This is crazy.
Yeah. Do you see it? So this is the 100th anniversary of the Chinese Communist Party.
Oh, it isn't. Is it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. 2021 is it's the 100th anniversary of the communist takeover in China.
All right.
Yep.
Wow. So yeah, we're gaslighted, right? That's where they,
Mhm.
they keep turning the lights down. And in this case, what they're trying to pretend, all the media is flipped, and now they're all talking about the lab
Mhm.
hypothesis.
Right.
When we just have to pretend like they didn't tell us all we were conspiracy theorists,
Right.
including Ed Stetzer, by the way, who said we were conspiracy theorists.
Yeah. So
Yeah. So I'll be taking an apology.
it is it's 1984.
Yeah.
Again, if you haven't read 1984, read 1984. It will blow your mind how the left have basically taken 1984 as their playbook,
Yeah.
and people just go along with it.
It's crazy.
It's the ministry of truth. So the ministry of truth, everything is flip-flopped in 1984. So the ministry of truth actually is devoted to propagating lies.
Yeah.
And the main lie is they've always been at war with this one world power. So there's three major world powers,
Mm-hmm.
and the what is propagated is that two are always at war with one.
Yeah.
But what the ministry of truth does is that they'll every once in a while they'll switch stuff so that you've always been at war with this other country, and they'll redact stuff. They'll look through all the publications and they'll change it so that you are brainwashed by Big Brother into thinking, yes, we've always been at war with this one
It's
world
always
power.
been like this,
It's always been this, even though
They changed it
they
15 years ago.
changed it.
Yeah, 15 years ago.
And
they switched it.
that's what's happening before our eyes. We have a ministry of truth. It's the media, and they change it. They change the narrative, and they're expecting you to forget. And
Well-
we need to be more discerning as Christians. We need to be more discerning, and truth is truth, and it doesn't matter what we're being told by the media. If it's true, if it coincides with reality, then that's the truth, regardless of whether Facebook is censoring it or not.
Yeah. You could see this so clearly when just like maybe 3 weeks ago, Rand Paul was questioning Dr. Fauci,
Mhm.
and he's like, people who have contracted COVID or have natural immunity to the virus, they don't need to wear a mask, right? They have natural immunity. People who have been immunized, they don't need to wear a mask. And Fauci's like, no, they still need to wear a mask. And so he's like, no, and he's telling Fauci, he's like, I want the data, the scientific data, present it. And he says, you can't, because all of the data shows this. And people were blasting Rand Paul. Like, you need to listen to the science. Well, he was.
Yeah.
Right? 3 weeks later.
Yeah.
What is Fauci saying? He's saying the same thing that Rand Paul was saying. The decision to change it was never based on the science.
Yeah.
It's always a political motivation to change it. They were trying to manipulate people before into getting vaccines.
Yeah.
Right. And then they saw that wasn't a good tactic to use. The switch was, if you get vaccinated, you have natural immunity and you don't need to wear a mask.
Right.
So they just switched their tactic.
Yeah.
But the whole goal was to bring about some type of societal behavior.
Right.
And when they saw this tactic wasn't working, they switched it. It wasn't based on science at all.
Mm-hmm.
And Rand Paul exposed that.
Right.
They're not being truthful.
Did you see the Babylon Bee article that came out a couple of days ago? Dr. Fauci gets into an argument with 7 previous versions of himself.
No.
Yeah.
It's pretty funny.
Because he's just constantly changing what he says.
Yeah. Dang, dude.
Don't follow these little phrases, these little logo, follow the science.
Yeah.
Like, actually follow it. Don't just follow what someone is telling you. Actually follow it.
Well, here's what's scary about that. You say follow the science. Let's talk about just propaganda and scientists for a minute. Okay, scientists are funded, and everything goes around money.
Right.
So what happened last year when those in charge decided they were going to shut down discussion on the lab? What happened? Well, scientists started publishing papers about why it couldn't be true.
Right.
And then they said there's a scientific consensus that this coronavirus evolved naturally.
Right.
Well, I know there wasn't consensus because I was able to find those talking about those that had examined the virus saying that's an impossibility, that they see markers in the virus itself that make it impossible that it has evolved naturally into the state that it's in. But those guys were shut down because those in power and the majority,
right.
Again, there's money tied to all of this. And how can you trust them? Like, they're not this like neutral, morally neutral people.
Though they like to present themselves that way.
Yes, they do. And now everyone's switching their story all of a sudden. And it's not because they found new stuff. This stuff has been out there all along. There's one lady, she might have got disappeared. Do you remember seeing her? She was from China and she was seeking asylum.
I remember seeing her, but I have no idea what happened to her.
She probably got disappeared.
Yeah, I don't know.
She's like, they're going to try to disappear me because I have evidence that it was created in the Wuhan lab.
Yeah.
She's probably gone.
Yeah.
Well, we
you can see the idol in our culture because they say things like follow the science.
Yeah.
And if the science says this, we're supposed to follow it.
Yeah.
Because science has been made our God.
Yeah.
And so you have to follow it
right.
no matter what it says. And if it flips, just ignore that inconsistency and follow it because it is our God.
Yeah.
And for Christians, science is not our God. Right? If
you actually do science as far as like testing, things should be testable. A theory should be testable and repeatable. And if if it can be tested and it's found to be repeatable, well, then it can move to fact.
Yeah.
It can move from theory to fact. And some theories maybe can't be proven 100%, but they're so repeatable and testable that everyone kind of is under the consensus. Okay, like we understand this to be generally true. That's doing science,
right?
Like science isn't when people use the word science, they don't usually mean what
they've turned it into
is.
something it's not.
Yeah, it's No, yeah, you're right. So, we don't usually follow the science on a lot of things, right? Like, so, we'll talk about women in the military. We don't follow the science on that.
Right.
We don't.
Mm.
What's going on in America and what's being pushed is that women can do anything a man can do. They can't.
Yeah.
Here's pure insanity. Okay, we don't need to do a social experiment and try to get women in the field artillery on the gun line. We already know that they can't pick up a 100-pound round over and over and over all day long.
Mm.
They can't do it. So do you need to enlist them in the military to do that little experiment to find out? Apparently our government thought so, and they tried to do that. It's pure craziness, man.
Yeah.
Can't do it. So that bridges us to this.
Yeah, let's change to the different.
Let's get to the military stuff.
Yeah.
All right, we're gonna show this. This is about a 5-minute long video because this crazy recruiting ad came out.
Yep.
For America's Army. It's pure craziness. I'm not even gonna describe it. I'm just gonna let the full effect of it hit.
Yeah.
When I show. This video is China's recruiting video, Russia's, and then the last one they'll show is the U.S. Okay?
I'm excited to watch.
If you don't understand that our country is under God's judgment, you're going to understand after you watch this because it is straight crazy. All right? The military is not a game, right? This is for real life, life and death stuff, right? This is very serious stuff. But this video is going to launch us into a discussion about how Christians should view the military and view violence. We're going to have to describe it for those that are listening because they can't see. So,
I would encourage you, even if you normally listen, to watch this video.
Yeah.
You're just not going to you're not going to get the full effect.
Yeah, you're not going to
unless you watch it.
We'll try to describe it. We'll describe it a little bit.
Let's just watch the whole thing and then describe it.
Okay. Well, we may say these are tanks.
Yeah, right.
These are jets.
Yeah.
Here we go. China.
我们已经习惯达到。
王局，到！转力动员大会现在开始。
一声到，是一句承诺。
军长同志，一方前准备完毕，请指示。什么？战！
一声到，是一种割舍。一声到，是一次重塑。
海上、空中、陆上各作战机群已修订完善作战计划。
一声到，是一场冲锋。用生命扛起使命，我们用忠诚筑起长城，改革强军，征途如虹。
历史告诉我，改革创新与时俱进，是人民军队不断发展的康庄大道。人民军队的力量来自改革创新，人民军队的胜利来自改革创新。
祖国召唤，我必到。
若有战，终必回。
一声到，一声到。
Это
Russia.
Первый день твоей новой жизни. То, что было вчера, не имеет значения. То, кем ты был прежде, уже никого не волнует. Теперь важно то, кем ты будешь сегодня. Что ты знаешь о себе? На что ты способен? Вопросы могут остаться без ответов, но разве ты сможешь потом спокойно спать? Узнать себя, познать границы своих возможностей. К черту границы. Ты готов ломать себя до изнеможения. Каждый день. Здесь боль закаляет. Шрамы, повседневность. Это ты решил себе что-то доказать. Командир здесь только для того, чтобы ты мог увидеть в нем врага. Потому что без врага нет боя, а без боя нет победы. Но на самом деле, главный враг — это ты. Вчерашний ты. Твоя задача — выследить врага, догнать его, превзойти, стать лучше, чем он, и вернуться назад победителем. Потому что завтра первый день твоей новой жизни.
Here we go. America.
This is the story of a soldier who operates your nation's Patriot missile defense systems.
It's sad, man.
It begins in California with a little girl raised by two moms.
China's trembling.
Yeah.
Although I had a fairly typical childhood, took ballet, played violin, I also marched for equality. I like to think I've been defending freedom from an early age. When I was 6 years old, one of my moms had an accident that left her paralyzed. Doctors said she might never walk again. But she tapped into my family's pride to get back on her feet, eventually standing at the altar to marry my other mom. With such powerful role models, I finished high school at the top of my class, and then attended UC Davis, where I joined a sorority full of other strong women. But as graduation approached, I began feeling like I'd been handed so much in life, a sorority girl stereotype. Sure, I'd spent my life around inspiring women, but what had I really achieved on my own? One of my sorority sisters was studying abroad in Italy. Another was climbing Mount Everest. I needed my own adventures, my own challenge. And after meeting with an Army recruiter, I found it. A way to prove my inner strength and maybe shatter some stereotypes along the way. I'm U.S. Army Corporal Emma Malone Lord, and I answered my calling.
Oh,
There you go.
man.
Hey,
Oh,
watch out for America.
One of these commercials is not like the others. Oh man, two things that stood out to me. Well, I mean, there's a lot that stood out. I mean, the fact that America's commercial is half cartoon.
Mm-hmm.
You could tell the difference between the music.
Oh yeah.
All right, so the two big things that stuck out to me is one, when you looked at the Chinese and Russian commercials, I didn't see any women.
I saw a couple women in the Chinese one.
Did you?
Yeah,
Okay.
they were doing like some medical work.
I did see the medical and
Yeah,
the astronaut.
Yeah,
I think they were making they were looking at the suits.
Okay.
The second one is in the Chinese one, especially the Chinese one, but the Russian one also. It was about the army.
Uh-huh.
It was about the group.
Yeah.
The American one was about the individual.
Yeah. It was all about her goals.
Mm-hmm. China and Russia were all about. You can't understand what they're saying. I mean, if you're, we only
You
know
can
one
get it
language,
from the
but you
imagery.
can get it from the imagery. It's all about their homeland.
It's all about the homeland. And
You had protecting, your family.
yeah, the Russian guy laying with his presumed wife.
Yeah,
in the field.
but the American one, it was all about self-fulfillment.
Yeah.
What have I haven't accomplished anything in my life.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's you're not going to be all in, ready to lay down your life to defend. Well, I just want to be, I just want to fulfill my calling.
Yeah.
But your home, your family, your way of life, those
Right.
are things that you'll lay down your life for.
Right. Yeah.
They couldn't be any further apart.
Yeah. Yeah.
I can't imagine what it was like watching it as someone who was in the military.
Yeah. We're in trouble. We're in big trouble, man.
I mean, the Chinese, the Chinese one was all about, I mean, just total annihilation, like just firing off just a barrage of missiles. The American one, you can't even show the real,
there's
the
nothing
real
going on.
stuff. It's got to be a cartoon. Like they show a cartoon
Guns
of this stuff going
missiles,
on.
running from fire.
Yeah.
Yeah. Danger.
Now I remember American commercials looking like that.
Yeah.
Like growing up, I remember watching like the Marines.
Yeah.
And they're in the line of fire. They're in danger.
Right.
And they're a force that you don't want to run up against. But this commercial, I mean, it's just laughable.
Well, the reason they're doing that is because, so many people spend so much time talking about how evil America is. How are you going to recruit kids that have grown up being taught that America is evil? They need to lay down their life for this country, right? So you've got to now pitch to them their individual self-fulfillment.
Yeah.
That they've got to accomplish something, and they can do it there, rather than this is a great country and you ought to serve it. So many have served before you, and you kind of stand on their legacy,
right?
And you ought to serve as well, and that's a great thing. It's selfless service is what it is. You're putting others before yourself. And patriotism. There's no patriotism anymore. It's gone. Patriotism is evil, of course, right?
Yeah.
Patriotism is part of white supremacy,
nationalism,
right? But so, George, is it the same in Russia? Is it part of white supremacy there?
Right.
Or in China?
Yeah.
Is it like is it supremacy for them? They're considered people of color, so is that like people of color supremacy in China?
Yeah.
For them to appeal to their nationalism and their pride, right? It is in America, though, right? So you can't have any patriotism in your recruiting videos anymore,
right?
Because all that's bad stuff.
Yeah.
But we're in trouble, man. We talked about this. You should think about your army, your military. You need to think about your military like you would think about your football team. Right? And everybody loves Friday night football in America. Everybody loves it, right? You're there for your team, and you want your team to win, right? And there's more than just the players on the field, But what you don't do is you don't say, hey, you know what we really need? We need on our Friday night football team when we're going up against our rivals. What we need is diversity on this team. We need to make sure this football team is represented totally equally of all people who, whatever gender they would say that they are, they need to be out there too, George. Whatever their sexuality, right? We need to have lesbians on the football team too. We need to have women. Women need to be on the football team. No. You know why? Because
you want to win.
You want to win. So who do you want on your football team? Well, you want
the biggest, baddest guys.
You want the biggest, baddest, meanest guys to step on the football field, and when they step on the football field, it's war, and you want them to actually pummel the other team. You want them to win. You're playing to win. You're playing for keeps. And you know what? Women are part of that too. If you look out on most Friday Night Football light, you know who the water people are? Oh, they're girls. Who would the trainers be? Well, they're probably females. Many of them are, not always, but those are roles that can, and they're part of the team. They're participating.
Right.
The military is like football, but for keeps.
Right.
Like you're playing for keeps. This is life and death. The purpose of the military, it used to be, I mean, there's part of the soldier's creed that says, I stand ready to deploy, engage, and destroy the enemies of the United States of America in close combat. Like that means if your weapon, you run out of ammunition, you pull out a knife and you stab to death until it's all over.
Yeah.
Right? You're indoctrinated with this mindset. You're a soldier. You exist to destroy the enemies of the United States of America. Right? We're not a peacekeeping force.
Right.
You send us somewhere, we're going to destroy everything in our path and kill everyone in our path until they surrender. That is the military.
Yeah.
I'm sorry if you have a different idea about what the military is. It's not a peacekeeping force. We're not the Peace Corps. And so who do you want in your military? Well, the same ones you'd want on your football team.
Yeah.
You want the baddest, most athletic, most physically fit, most mentally strong, mentally stable people that can wield violence in a controlled manner without becoming psychopaths. Right? You don't want psychopaths that love killing people in your military. They need to be identified and kicked out of the military. But you
don't want the guy in your squad that when he has leave on the weekend dresses in a frilly dress and thinks he's a woman.
Well, I would say you'd want the most mentally stable people. Right. And, we'll be called bigots for this, but of course the what is the American Psychiatric Association? What is it? The DMV or whatever. What do they call their manual?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, well, they change that, and they don't change it according to science.
Mm-hmm.
They change it according to political pressure, and that would be classified as some type of mental disorder, right? No, you want mentally stable people that are able to handle that pressure, the most physically fit, able to do it, and women can have a role in that.
Right.
It's this is my belief. They can serve in logistical roles. It's vital. You can't. I mean, we have the best logistical side in the world. That's why our military is so good. Right. That's why we had such success in World War II, because we were able to get food, medical supplies, and all that to the people that needed it. In other countries, they just couldn't do it. So, logistical side, medical side, women can play a role in that. The combat stuff, I'm old school, right? And I think you need to have the best. And I don't mean just they just need to be all men, because men need to get discriminated against as well, and they need to get put out. When I had command of a battery, see, I'm like old school military, George. I probably don't apply to the type of people who are in command today, right? I kicked out, I think, 13 or 14 soldiers out of the Army in 12 months, right? You can't pass PT, you're gone.
Yeah.
This is your job.
Right.
No excuses. You get paid money to do this.
Yeah.
You signed up. You knew what you were signing up for. You can't keep yourself physically fit. You're a danger to all of us. That's how I look at you.
Yeah.
You fall out of a run, you're a danger. You're a danger to all of us if we were to deploy. You can't shoot, you're gone. You have a lack of discipline, you're done, right? You have to follow the process. The military has a process for all of this, but get the weak links out, go. And those are all men.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I served.
We understand this. Like your illustration, your comparison between football and the military. Like, we understand this in athletics. We are entertained by the biggest, baddest football players. It's the most athletic basketball players and baseball players. Like, they're the ones, right? Because you want to win. You want your team to win. But then when it comes to the military, all of a sudden it's got to be woke.
Right.
And it's a bizarre thing to see.
Listen, we have great technology, and that's why our military we are advanced. We're probably still 20 years ahead of China militarily because of our technology. But all the technology in the world is not going to save you from a 10 million man army.
Right.
When they have physically fit males on the march, and what we have are beta males who have the bone density of an 8-year-old boy, we aren't going to win. We're in trouble, man.
Yeah.
We're in big trouble. I don't know. I'm not even going to propose an answer.
Sleep well tonight.
I don't even know what the answer is.
Sleep well tonight, knowing that this woman who grew up with 2 moms,
right,
and was so inspired by them, joined the military, not to protect you,
yeah,
but to answer her call to feel like she has a sense of accomplishment.
Yeah.
Sleep well, knowing that you're on her mind. So how does this fit with the biblical worldview? I mean, we're talking about destroying living people. Like, we're talking about killing others. How does this line up with the scripture? Because there would be Christians who would say, we need to be more compassionate.
Yeah.
We need to seek not to destroy, but we need to find non-lethal ways to end conflict.
Right.
So
And-
how's this line up? I remember Barack Obama.
Mm-hmm.
I don't remember. I don't know if he was president yet or if he was campaigning, but he looked at Matthew chapter 5.
Mm-hmm.
Blessed are the peacemakers, for they shall be called sons of God.
Yeah.
And he said our own Defense Department can't live up to the Sermon on the Mount.
Right.
And there would be, I think, even Christians, but there would be people in the world
Yeah.
who would say, you're right. The Defense Department doesn't, and we should.
Mm-hmm.
We should be peacemakers.
Right.
So how do we answer something like that?
Well, I think we should all be seeking peace and to be peacemakers. Always should seek nonviolent resolution whenever possible. Always. Military should be a last resort. This is a last resort. But when you push that button, it's not, hey, I'm going here to have a conversation. Like, I'm going here to achieve peace as quickly as possible. So the first thing you'd have to ask is, does the Bible teach pacifist stance?
Mm-hmm.
No violence ever, no matter
Right.
what. Or does it teach a different stance?
Mm-hmm.
And I think the Bible teaches a different stance. Like, I don't think the Bible teaches that we can't defend ourselves. And you should see your military as that. Now, the military can be employed in ways that are unethical, right? That's not the individual soldier's job to discern that. Those in leadership will be held accountable to God by how they employ the military. And there are also things that you don't know, like that we don't get access to, that they see. Like, so if they deploy and they say, this is vital to our national defense and our national survival, like, the people in the media are never going to get the intelligence that they have. We're never going to get it. So what we need to talk about is, I think, why do we believe the Bible doesn't force us to take a pacifist stance, right? So if you take a pacifist stance and somebody did break into your house, you just let them kill you.
Well, I mean,
Right?
John Piper, he got a lot of slack.
Yeah.
When he said that several years ago, that he didn't even know if he could defend his wife
Right.
if someone was attacking her.
Yeah.
And I think we've even talked about it on the podcast. That's just a ridiculous thought.
Right. The Bible, God never calls us to. Now, we can be victimized. People can victimize you.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they can verbally abuse you. They might even insult you by slapping you or striking you.
Yeah.
But your wife's made in God's image. She's an image bearer. And you're to love her.
Right.
So your choice is allow one image bearer to be killed, stand there and do nothing, or kill a different image bearer and save another image bearer, right? Difficult choice. But I think the choice is clear. I think anyone who is put in that situation,
We're supposed to love our wives as Christ loved the
Right.
church.
you're not even going to have to think about it.
Christ didn't stand by while his bride was being killed.
Mm-hmm.
He stepped in,
Mm-hmm.
right?
And he steps in at the end.
He stepped in to lay down his life.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, he's going to be an avenger when he comes back. He is going to bear the sword against those who have violated his bride
Or trying to destroy his bride.
Yeah.
So there are relevant passages to look at.
Well, maybe we should talk. Since I brought up Matthew 5, maybe we should start there.
Okay.
And so, how would you answer Barack Obama?
Mhm.
How would you answer someone that said, "Blessed are the peacemakers"? Our own Defense Department can't live up to those standards.
Right.
How would you answer someone that used that line of
Mm-hmm.
reasoning?
That it doesn't apply to militaries. That would be the first thing. Jesus isn't talking about. That's not even in his mind as he's talking about this.
Right.
He's not thinking about. He's not thinking about that. He's speaking of. This is how we live on the down in street, the street level, or the dusty road level in Jesus' time.
Is there anything in the text that would help us to know that?
Are you talking about the striking on the other cheek one?
No, just the blessed are the peacemakers.
I don't know. What are you trying to get at? We'll
Well,
have to get there
I mean,
and look.
just the context where he says, where Matthew writes, seeing the crowds, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him.
Right.
Like, these are not instructions to just the world in general.
Yes.
They're instructions for this is what it looks like if you want to be a disciple.
Yeah, he's talking to his followers, and then he gives instructions. You've heard it said, then I say to you, and he gives the truer sense of what God is speaking of in the Old Testament. So how do you live as a disciple? And one relevant passage is the striking on the other cheek one. That's the one people use to justify their pacifist position. So Jesus said, if someone strikes you on the cheek, you're to turn the other cheek.
Yeah.
Look, he means you don't retaliate. And I think that's right. You don't retaliate.
Do not resist the one who is evil.
Yeah. And he's not talking about them trying to kill you. He's talking about them insulting you. So to be struck in context would, I think, inform us that this is a backhanded strike, that you've been smacked across the face, right? And perhaps even to provoke you into some type of physical retaliation. You're to turn the other cheek, because what's going on is not really that your life's being threatened, but it's more like your reputation is being threatened. They're challenging you publicly. And he's saying, be willing to be mocked publicly and to be shamed publicly. If someone were to strike you in that way, you turn the other cheek. Give them your other cheek too. And I think we know that this is the case because there's a relevant passage. I think it's in Luke. Is it in Luke where he talks about buying a sword if you don't have one?
Yeah.
Where's that at?
Do we want to go over there?
Yeah, maybe go over there.
Okay. This is Luke chapter 22, and it's this is actually part of his farewell discourse. It's too bad you couldn't talk about this when you were doing John 14 through 17.
Yeah.
Because he says this somewhere in the same time that he's doing that. It's right after he predicts that Peter's going to betray him. It says, he said to them, when I sent you out with no money bag or knapsack or sandals, did you lack anything? They said nothing. He said to them, but now let the one who has a money bag take it, and likewise a knapsack, and let the one who has no sword sell his cloak and buy one. For I tell you that this scripture must be fulfilled in me. And he was numbered with the transgressors. For what is written about me has its fulfillment. And they said, look, Lord, here are 2 swords. And he said to them, it is enough.
Yeah.
All right, so he's preparing them for what's going to happen after he's crucified. I mean, he's preparing them for their ministry.
Yeah.
The ministry of going out. They're gonna go out to unknown places around the world. And he tells them to bring your money.
Right.
Bring a backpack that's got your stuff in it.
Yeah.
And if you don't have a sword, sell your cloak and buy a sword.
Yeah, you're going to be traveling the Roman road system.
Right.
Right. The pretty advanced roads. This is why Rome was so powerful. They had this incredible road system.
Right.
And you could go anywhere by walking. Literally, you could like walk anywhere and then catch a boat to the other side and keep walking all the way to Rome if you wanted.
Yeah.
And that's dangerous because there are people on those roads people don't understand. Not only could they rob you and kill you, but there was a very lucrative business of stealing people and selling them into slavery.
Right.
You know, you get jumped, knocked out. Next thing you know, you wind up, you're across the Roman Empire on your way to Spain. And that's what he says. Take a sword because it's a dangerous world.
The only, I mean, you could probably do gymnastics to get around what he's saying, but the only way that I can understand verse 36 is he's telling you to take a sword with you for self-defense.
Yes.
That's the only way that I can understand it.
Right.
Now, verse 38, you got some disciples who are a little eager.
Right.
We've got two swords right now. He's not yet. He knows he's going to be betrayed.
Right.
Peter's going to cut off the ear of Malchus. And so now is not the time.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not saying now, but in the future when you go out, because you've got I think Matthew goes down to Africa, Thomas goes to India. You've got them going up into Germanic territory up north. This is dangerous territory.
Yeah.
And he's not telling them go and just die by bandits on the road.
Right.
You can defend yourself. And I that's the only way I can understand this verse, is that he's telling them to make sure that you're packing.
What's interesting about it is it appears the stance of the disciples would become, if when preaching the gospel we receive persecution, we don't resist, even if that means we give up our life in the act of preaching and proclaiming the good news. But while you're on your way to do that, right, you don't have to just let somebody victimize you and kill you.
Die for the gospel. You don't have to just be killed. You don't have to just be murdered.
I'm just on my way somewhere.
It's not a virtue of Christianity that we just allow ourselves to be murdered by just whoever. That's why I think that we can even use this verse to defend having a gun in your house for self-defense. Carrying for self-defense, I think is allowed by this verse. I don't think that I think Piper is absolutely wrong. If someone breaks into your house, they're fair game, right? That doesn't mean that you have to set up a bunch of booby traps to be entertained by their death.
Right.
And it doesn't mean that you have to just immediately start blasting them. We talked about this last year. The Deuteronomy talks about this. If someone breaks into your house at night and you kill them, you're innocent. But if it's during the daytime and you kill them, then you'll have guilt.
Right.
So
because you're able to see,
because you're able to see them, right?
You're able to see,
and they can see you.
You're able to see. Are they there and they're unarmed and they're just trying to snatch my PS5? But you're not going to kill a living human being because they're stealing your PS5, and they're no threat to you at all.
Yeah.
At nighttime, you don't know.
Right.
So you don't wait to find out. It's too late. It's too late then.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So point your gun at them in the daytime and say, "You better get out of here."
Yeah.
But I think self-defense is allowed.
I think even too, it could be immoral to see somebody harming another person and to do nothing.
Right.
If you didn't use physical violence to stop another person from hurting another person, I think that could be cowardly and immoral.
Right. And that moves us back into the realm of the military. It would have been immoral for America not to have joined in with the Allies in World War II. Now, I know that it was Japan attacking us that pushed us into that, but after all the stuff about what the Nazis were doing with the Jews, for the aggression that would have wiped out Britain, for America not to have helped would have been immoral for them.
Yeah.
Because the Nazis were attacking innocent people.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
And we see that the military it's not a sin to be in the military.
Yeah.
Even the Roman military, which was an oppressive force.
They were occupying.
Right.
Now this, we'll take a little extra time because this is very interesting to think about. Okay. But you helped us to move on. I think you're gonna take us to John the Baptist first.
Yeah.
And then we'll look at another passage. So take us to John the Baptist, and These are Roman soldiers, right? So I'll set up the background while you're flipping your Bible there.
Yeah.
The Roman Empire has total control and total power of where they occupy, right? When they occupy somewhere, they'll send in a military presence that's there permanently, an outpost. So you'll have these different Roman legions and centurions heading up and leading up these cohorts of soldiers. And there's military presence everywhere. If you were alive in Jesus' time, you saw Roman soldiers probably every day.
Right.
Their presence is there ever. It's very interesting to think about. Like, if you put it into the American framework of how they talk about things, these are the oppressors, right?
Right.
And they interact with John the Baptist, they interact with Jesus, and their interaction are very interesting. And I think they can help us to understand if we can serve in the military or not.
Right. Yeah. John the Baptist is out in the wilderness and he's baptizing and he's preaching the gospel. He's preparing them for Christ to come, and he exhorts them to bear fruit in keeping with repentance. So you can't just come and be baptized and go off and just continue living your wicked lifestyle. He blasts the religious leaders for their hypocrisy. And then in verse 10 of Luke chapter 3, says, the crowds asked him, what then shall we do? And he answered them, whoever has 2 tunics is to share with him who has none, and whoever has food is to do likewise. Tax collectors, these were the dregs of society for Israel. They would spit on tax collectors. Tax collectors also came to be baptized and said to him, teacher, what shall we do? He doesn't tell them, stop being a tax collector, go get another job. He said to them, collect no more than you are authorized to do. So the tax collectors, they'd often skim a little. And then verse 14, soldiers also asked him, and we, what shall we do? He doesn't tell them, leave the army.
You guys are part of the oppressing class.
Right. He doesn't guilt them. Right. He said to them, do not extort money from anyone by threats, by false accusation, and be content with your wages. So don't abuse people.
Yeah.
Don't rob people because you
can.
Don't extort people by saying, don't you know that I can
destroy your
whole life
village.
Yeah. I can, don't you know I can go tell my superior that you're an insurrectionist and you'll be hanging on a cross.
Yeah.
Right. Don't abuse people. He doesn't say leave the army, go find a more virtuous occupation. He says be a good soldier, be a righteous soldier. Don't abuse people by being a soldier.
Yeah. That's right. Now, this next one is Jesus' interaction with a centurion. Now, centurion is a leader of 100. Probably a very gritty, battle-hardened person, because a centurion rises up through the ranks, right? They're not an appointed, this is not an appointed position that you can get if your family has influence in Rome. Right? You're going to live through many battles, be a seasoned tactician, warrior, leader of men, probably in the service for a number of years.
He's an officer.
Well, kind of. It's like the blending of an officer and a first sergeant today. If you were to blend those two together, he'd have all the authority of an officer, but he would have risen through the ranks like a first sergeant. And so Jesus has this interaction with him. It says, when he had entered Capernaum, a centurion came forward and appealing to him, Lord, my servant is lying paralyzed at home, suffering terribly. And he said to him, I will come and heal him. So Jesus says, I'll come and heal him. And the centurion replies, I'm not worthy to even have you come under my roof.
He doesn't say, first you have to divest yourself of your whiteness.
No. He doesn't say, hey, listen here, oppressor. These Jews are my people.
Right.
This is a problem for those who say that Jesus came identifying himself with the victim class and to overthrow the oppressor. Because here's the oppressor.
Be a revolutionary.
Here is the picture of the Roman Empire,
right?
The militaristic, violent Roman Empire. The centurion, and Jesus says, I'll come and heal him. And he doesn't say, what you said. But the centurion says, I'm not even worthy to have you come to my house. Just say the word, and I know he'll be healed, because I too am a person under authority, right? And so he recognizes in Jesus things that even the Jews aren't recognizing. He's recognizing that Jesus has authority to speak the word. How does he have this? I don't know. But if you keep reading through the story, and by the way, he does it, and his servant is healed. Jesus points the centurion out, like he stops to all the disciples, and he's marveling at this guy's faith.
Mm-hmm.
And he tells them, I haven't found faith like this in all of Israel.
Right.
And he tells them, I'm telling you that in that day many will come from the east and the west and recline at the table, at this final banquet with God, but the children of Abraham will be cast out. He uses the centurion as a model of what saving faith looks like.
Right.
He doesn't tell him to get out. He doesn't say, hey, man, could you get out of well, maybe don't get out yet. Maybe try to get your military to leave, stop occupying us.
Mm-hmm.
You guys oppressors, victimizers, get out of here.
Be an advocate.
Be an advocate for us. And he doesn't do any of that.
Mm-hmm.
He doesn't tell him, hey, you're in an immoral profession.
Right.
Get out. Now you have to wrestle with this. Now this is strange. I was thinking about this, George, because of something. Thomas Sowell. You say his name's Sowell?
I think that's how you say it.
He's like a kind of a philosopher, economist, brilliant mind. He's a black man, but he's kind of been shunned. Like they want black voices out front,
right?
Just the kind they like,
right?
He doesn't fit that.
Yeah.
He was talking about the history of how the world progresses, and it plays into this. It's a sidebar, but it plays in. When a powerful government colonizes another people, like colonization is a bad word, right? Terrible.
Right.
What he says when he studied this stuff is that whenever people are colonized, you don't like it, right? It's not good.
Yeah.
But wherever that happens, usually what follows is a period of prosperity and peace and a skyrocketing of the value of life, even for the most common person, the commoner, and increase in wealth, education, and health. And so I think Jesus has a correct view of how the world has fallen, the providence of God, which is the providence of himself, and how he's established this empire at this particular period of time to bring about what's called the Roman peace, the Pax Roma, right?
Mm-hmm.
The Roman peace is a great period of prosperity,
right? Rise
in education, technology, health, prosperity, and it laid this kind of like environment where the gospel could go forth at like incredible speed for this time. We don't often have the same view of the way God's providentially worked in the world.
You've got to have as a Christian, you have to have a high view of God's sovereignty and his providence. Mm-hmm. That the way the world is right now is because of God's sovereignty.
Right.
And we don't understand all the ways that God in his providence works. We're not privy to that information. But we are privy to the fact that it is God's providence that nations rise and fall, kings rise and fall because of God's sovereignty. And it's all to bring this world to its prepared end.
Right.
And we don't know why certain things happen, but we do know that they do happen because of God's sovereignty. Mm-hmm. And we've got to have that's what's so frustrating about many Christians falling into the CRT mindset and the ideology and using the language of Christian nationalism, whatever that means. I still haven't found a solid definition of what that is, and colonization and just this idea that it's just white people everywhere they go, they're a plague and they just conquer people.
Yeah.
And not seeing that God accomplishes good out of even evil.
The evil intentions of men, yeah.
And we need to have a high view of God's providence. That doesn't mean that we just sit back and we're like, oh, that was everything that happened was good.
Right.
The Roman Empire was evil.
Right.
But it's all part of God's plan to spread the gospel.
Mm-hmm.
Without Alexander the Great and the Greeks conquering the known world and Hellenizing, making everything Greek so that everyone there's a common language.
Yeah.
Just like English is the common language nowadays.
Mm-hmm.
Without it, you would have had translation problems.
Yeah.
Right. But because of it, Paul and the apostles, they can write the New Testament in Greek, and it can go everywhere, and there's someone who can read it.
Yeah.
Without the Romans conquering the Greeks and spreading out their empire and bringing about the Pax Romana and building the roads and making it safer to travel, the gospel couldn't have spread like it did.
Yeah.
So God and his that doesn't mean that the Roman Empire conquering people and being an occupying force and crucifying, thousands of people was good. It just means that this is part of God's providence.
Yeah, and you know what? To live in that time period in the areas that Rome had conquered, like I said, if you're honest about it, like Saul tries to be, the common person gets to live with protection. You don't. There's no threat of barbarians raiding here.
Right.
I can just live a peaceful life
as
a commoner, be more educated, have better health. So there's all kinds of things that go on to this. I'm sure if given the choice,
we don't have to maintain an army because there's the Roman army that will defend us.
If given the choice at that time, you'd probably say, yeah, I'd rather live in this conquered area than like in a part they hadn't conquered yet.
Yeah.
Like eventually they went to England.
Yeah.
But before they went there, I guess I'm from southern England, right?
Mm-hmm.
So my people, I'm sure your people were at one time barbarians, like paint their bodies up with like blue paint and like do human sacrifice and all kind of weird stuff. And they get conquered.
Yeah.
And they probably didn't love it.
Right.
But guess what?
And evil was done to them.
Evil was done to them, but it brought them out of the Stone Ages.
Right.
And then eventually, as they progressed, they'd get conquered again. Like people would raid again from.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a story. It's the history of mankind.
Right. And we need to view history this way. The slave trade was evil. The transatlantic slave trade was evil, where they were kidnapping people from Africa and selling them over in America. That was evil. God's word is very clear on that. These people deserve the death penalty for doing this. But does God accomplish good? Did he accomplish good for people who were being kidnapped out of pagan Africa and brought to America where they could hear the gospel? Absolutely. Would you rather be a slave in America and believe the gospel and spend eternity with Jesus, or be a free pagan in Africa and die and go to hell?
Yeah.
Right. That we have to have a Christian worldview, and the unbelieving world is going to reject this.
Right.
There can be no good in the slave trade.
Well, they
at all,
and they'll also try to tie Christianity to the slave trade,
right? Where
we can actually point to the scriptures and say, look, they're actually violating Scripture,
right?
And if they are claiming to be a Christian and involved in it, they're in violation of God's word. You can't steal another man; it's a death penalty,
right?
The world is a much more complicated place than what people make it.
Yeah.
So two thoughts. Voddie Baucham has said, Voddie Baucham, African-American descendant of slaves, has said, and he is right now in Africa, the head of a seminary, right?
Yes.
So he's in Africa, and he says this: the best place to be a black man in the world is the United States of America, without a doubt. He can say that. I can't understand that perspective, but that's what he says. I believe him. I've not been to Africa. I don't know what it's like there.
Yeah.
He's been all over the world, and that's the providence of God playing out.
Yeah. We need to pursue righteousness. We need to pursue the kingdom of God. We need to be faithful to the Scriptures. We need to call out wickedness when we see it, injustice when we see it, while at the same time holding a high view of God's sovereignty and that the things that happen in this world happen because God has decreed it.
Right. So, okay, we kind of dovetailed into a lot of stuff. But we'll bring it back.
Yeah.
What started this was the Roman soldier, who's the occupying force.
Right.
We started talking about like a colonization, which has always occurred. White people didn't invent that. Right? Genghis Khan's not a white person.
Yeah.
Did you know that, George?
You're gonna hear CRT advocates say that slavery was invented by white people.
Right.
Anyone with half a brain knows that that is ridiculous.
Yeah. Didn't you know Genghis Khan was white?
Right.
I think it's so crazy that
the slavery that still exists in the Middle East.
Yeah.
Like this, we did not. You give us too much credit, right? So we're not the source of all evil. The human condition is fallen.
Yeah. And so we asked the question. The question is about the use of force and the military. What should our military be like? Well, it should be filled with, I think, professional, moral, hopefully moral people. That's my fear today, is that the further and further that we get away from God as a country, the more immoral our military will become. You don't want an immoral military. That's bad news.
Right. Going back to that commercial, it's all cutesy. It's cartoon. There's nothing really hard or serious about the military here. And we've got this story of this girl who grew up in California with two moms, and they were such an inspiration, and she just wants to fulfill her calling. If she is holding to these ideas of homosexuality, and she's not a moral person, and here she is in the military. I can imagine that she probably holds some other immoral attitudes. She has a distorted worldview, and so we've got an immoral person. You can dress it up with a cartoon, and you can have this this cute little story about her two moms, and there's some dangerous stuff that's not being said.
Yeah. George Washington created the military chaplaincy because he said he did not want immoral soldiers.
Yeah.
There's a lot in our history you've got to try to come to grasp. Okay, he's trying to stand up a military that can take on the superpower of the world. They've got to be good soldiers, disciplined, willing to do hard things. He doesn't want them immoral.
Right.
So he commissions the chaplain corps, and these are Christian chaplains. Okay,
right.
He's not going, hey, you know what? We need to get some Muslim chaplains in here. We need some Wiccans and some Buddhists. We've got to have diversity.
Yeah.
That's not what he did. He wanted them to hold to the Judeo-Christian ethic, right? If you're gonna be involved,
we can definitely say they weren't all Christians.
Of course, they weren't.
We don't need to put blinders on and say that everyone in the military was a Christian, but they had a Christian worldview.
Right.
Like the worldview of Christianity was dominant for them.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, you can look through and you can see, war crimes are going to be committed. It's going to be pretty hard to commit a war crime when you view the other person as an image bearer of God. Right. And it does bring up difficult things. Even Luther he grappled with this stuff. I'd have to try to look up and find this quote directly, but he said, "What's a Christian in war? What is the most loving thing you can do for your enemy? Kill him as fast as possible." Right? Because war is a terrible thing.
Right.
People have said war is hell, and if it comes to that, well, what do? Well, you're not going to, you're not seeking to maim and torture people. Hopefully it could be resolved peacefully, but if not, you've got to have people that are willing to at least have some sense of morality. That seems strange probably for people to think about when you're engaged in this profession. you've got to not like doing what you're doing, and you've got to seek to have it finished as quickly as possible.
Right.
In many cases, that means there's got to be a quick victory.
Yeah.
So, you know, where do we go? I mean, we're in trouble if that's the only people that we have. If it's China and their masculine 10 million man army, I mean, what do we do? I don't know.
Going up against the girl from California with 2 moms.
Yeah. We need to encourage maybe Christians to raise their children to not be opposed to joining the military.
Yeah.
Right. To be, you can be salt and light everywhere.
Right.
It's an important thing to do.
Yeah.
So, interesting topics today, George. We went really long on this, didn't we?
We did. Well, we chased a couple of rabbits today.
Yeah, we did.
Hopefully it was beneficial, though.
Hopefully so.
All right.
Yeah.
Well, before we end, we forgot to announce on Text Driven Tuesday that was going to be the last one for a little while.
Yeah, that'll be the last one for the summer. I'm going to try to see if I can republish some of the old ones.
Okay.
Like on the problem of evil.
Okay.
So I've had some people ask me a few things, and I'm like, were you here when they're like, no, we weren't here. I don't even know about that podcast. So I'm like, okay. I don't know if I can republish them. If I can't republish them, I'll post them on Facebook on Tuesdays.
Okay.
So that'll be up. They'll be new for you because we've got a lot of listeners recently.
Yeah. All right. Well, we wanted to make sure that people knew that so that on Tuesdays they weren't searching for the podcast.
That's right.
Right. Okay. Well, thank you for joining us today for this Free for All Friday. Hopefully it was beneficial for you. Hopefully it gave you some things to think about. Of course, we're always trying to get you to think about these issues from a biblical worldview. We're not trying to just express our opinions and our likes and dislikes. We're trying to come back to Scripture and ask, what does God's Word say? And so hopefully that's what we've done, and it encourages you to study your Bible more. And of course, always our aim is that you might be more and more conformed to Christ.